more about kind of this Metro Wasa housing study and what we're working on at the Regional Planning Commission. So I don't know if you remember, a few months ago, I had an opportunity to speak about some regional recovery work that we were embarking on. And one of the big arms of that work did involve housing. And housing continues to be something statewide, nationwide, but within our region, within our metro area, that is continuing to be kind of an issue for employers, residents, and on a multitude of layers. So one of the things that we are working on right now is a housing study that would encompass the Wasa metro area, just because so many people in our area work in one community, live in another, maybe they go to school somewhere, they're involved in some way, and we thought it would be beneficial to look at housing from a metro level versus just community by community. We have done studies for different communities through the years, and they're beneficial, but we think a snapshot in time will be helpful for many reasons. So we are looking at the cities of Mosen East, Schofield, Wasa, villages of Cronenweider, Maine, Marathon City, Rothschild, and Weston, and the town of Red Mountain at one point in time. And we are requesting $30,000 on behalf of these municipalities toward the creation of this Wasa Metro Housing Assessment. And just a little background, I'm not to go into a bunch of detail, but one of the most recent reports within the state that was just kind of really visible and really beneficial was Kurt Paulson. He's a UW-Madison professor. He provided a really nice study for the WRA on workforce housing in particular, and how the shortage of workforce housing really impacts us all. And one of the definitions that I like in his study is he says, a home is where a job sleeps. And he says it's just to kind of illustrate that, our employers, our industry is highly affected when there isn't housing to accommodate the employees. So we know there's a lot of shortages right now. I mean, we're all seeing the billboards, the advertisements, but even if employers are able to get these employees, oftentimes there isn't housing to accommodate that. So that's kind of the tie-in to economic development. And just to talk a little bit about the strategic plan, some of the kind of key points in the Marathon County Strategic Plan are the most prosperous. So that's just back to the economic development tie-in. And the Wasa metro area contains approximately 60% of the population and approximately 80% of the jobs. So this area, even if people are working in the surrounding communities, it's likely there's supply chain tie-ins and other tie-ins from the metro area that are creating an impact related to housing. And then the other highlight I kind of wanted to, in talking about the healthiest, one of the things with the housing trend throughout the last several decades is, several decades ago, it was very common to have smaller lot sizes, smaller homes that were closer to amenities, closer to transportation. And we've gone to these larger lot sizes and homes, which have created many issues, leading to affordability issues and different issues. But there's also a loss of the walkability component in some of those aspects. So I think there's quite a large tie-in to the Marathon County Strategic Plan. So, and I'm not going to read all this because I know you can read through it at your leisure, but for the scope of work, what we're looking at is, of course, a thorough background analysis with all kinds of data and demographics, housing gaps, economic factors, housing factors. But one of the things we really want to do with this study is many of the housing documents create really, really great data, and they provide all this data for communities. And oftentimes they don't really know what to do with it, or they don't really see a tie-in, I guess, how it applies to what's happening in actuality in their community. So one of the things we really want to do with this is we want a pretty robust public participation and outreach component. We really want to tie in what the residents of the communities are thinking, what the stakeholders are kind of seeing going on. So we want builders, realtors, people working in the housing segment. And then in addition, we would have an oversight committee that would kind of provide guidance throughout the process. And our local leaders would kind of help us form that. We also want a resident survey, and we would like to hold 3 public meetings to kind of gauge have visual impact studies and surveys available, so we get that information. So we would be looking at organizational strategy, what options are available to address need, what regulatory barriers exist. Again, this is pretty common. I mean, this is pretty common in most housing studies. We'd want to be looking at what's working well in other parts of the state. We'd want some real-time kind of tactical implementation strategies that communities can use as opportunities come up. So we'd want to tie that into implementation strategies. And then we would kind of combine all that and hopefully come out with a housing assessment that communities could really see some value in and see some ways that planning commissions, town boards, city councils could move some of those strategies forward to really make a difference in their communities. So we'd be looking at a 12 to 18 month timeline on this, and ideally we would like, because it's a collaborative effort, we would like kind of everyone involved. I mean, we're planning to commit $10,000 of our CARES Act technical assistance funds. Of course, we would want also buy-in from the local units, and then we are asking the county for $30,000 toward the project. And this is the total cost breakdown of that. And that is kind of a real quick general overview, and I don't know if anyone has any questions for me.
All right, thank you. And I need to apologize for not using the microphone earlier. I'm still adapting to being recorded for these meetings, so I'm sorry if anybody wasn't able to hear the first part of the meeting, but we will use our microphones moving forward. Questions from committee members? Not. It takes a moment for it to kick in. You want it to be green? Yep, keep talking.
Keep talking? And this is such a silly question for all that. I noticed you had said Mosinee, and it doesn't list it in your handouts.
Yep, you're right. So that is one city of everyone that's a little bit on the fence. They're not quite sure in terms of funding where they're at with things. So they have been a part of some of our meetings, but I didn't want to, the group that's listed is the group that was at our last meeting that formally asked us to bring the request to the county. So I didn't want to misrepresent the couple communities that weren't there. But they have not formally expressed whether or not they would be a part of it. But as it gets closer to final numbers, I would definitely be reaching out to them and kind of seeing where they're at with things.
Thank you.
Other questions? Supervisor Robinson?
I'm not a member of the committee, but from the perspective of the Metropolitan Planning Organization, this hasn't come to us, which includes all of those communities. Is there any reason why it hasn't been shared with us? And the concern that I have, given some of the past studies that we've had relative to shared services, is if we don't have buy-in and understanding of scopes at the beginning of the process, the end product doesn't tend to go anywhere. So what is the role of the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which has among one of its issues land use, but transportation and other things? And secondly, when we have a meeting next Tuesday, which I would be happy to put this on the agenda for.
That would be great. I mean, I agree with you. I think the more collaboration and the more buy-in, the more results are seen. Just as you're talking, I'm kind of thinking, as part of that oversight committee, I think that the Metropolitan Planning Organization would be a great entity. If they could have a representative on that oversight committee, I think that would be very beneficial and helpful to us. But I would appreciate that, and we can definitely be in contact about that, but that would be great if it could be at your next meeting. And I think the more collaboration and the more we get word out, I think you're right. I think we'll see a better end result no matter where it goes.
Thank you. And just for, I guess, some clarity that I didn't put out there yet to the committee members, this is listed as a possible determination item. We, as a committee, do not have a $30,000 budget to allocate towards this directly. So today, and administration, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that they're looking to see if we see the value behind this request the dollar amounts seem appropriate, things like that, and we would then make a recommendation to either deny or to recommend approval forward, and my assumption is forward to the HR Property Finance Committee. Is that accurate? So,
That sounds accurate, yes.
and I do have a question, not so much for Carrie as administrator or possibly even John. Is this a project that in any capacity could utilize some of the funds that the county has coming our way? Are there any unique funding opportunities, whether it's ARPA or something else, that this could potentially take advantage of? Or would we need to find this money out of our main budget or our 2022 budget?
Based on my, I don't know that the focus is solely pandemic related, so I would be hesitant to utilize ARPA funds.
Okay.
Because in the event that you get audited and an expenditure is not approved, then you're trying to find money on the back end. In terms of existing funds within the 2021 budget, this would be something that if you did make a recommendation to HR Finance and Property, they could consider utilizing their contingency fund balance to do that, the county board's contingency fund balance, or the committees. I can't remember, Chair of the HR Finance and Property Committee, Robinson, how much of your existing committee contingency fund is still available, if any. I don't know if you.
I think we're good.
Okay, and I just wanted to make sure that there was a path forward should we even make this recommendation, knowing that we don't have final say, but that means that we can, as a committee, at least decide if we feel that this is something appropriate for our county to be involved in. Another item that I think is important to mention is when we were first started talking about this, we were talking about coming in closer to the $15,000 level, and then through conversations, that amount for the county directly was increased to the $30,000, and the other municipalities combined were asked to do 15, and there's some reasons behind that, and so we as a county need to consider, does this have value for the county as a whole, even though the study is only going to be really in the greater metro area. I think that Carrie did a nice job of explaining how there is an impact for the rural areas as well, because there is so much crossover and so much mobility within our county. That's something to be to consider. And the people who live in those municipalities do pay taxes into the county, so in a sense they would be paying twice anyway. So there are some logical reasons for having made that shift, but ultimately that would be something that under the final decision of our HR Property Finance Committee to make a recommendation in as to whether or not financially it would be a fit. So, any other questions or comments from committee members or supervisors, either here or on the phone? Not hearing any other questions, is anyone interested in making a motion or taking an action one way or another on this item?
I guess I'd make the motion to.
Can I have you do that?
Oh.
Maybe.
No, yes. I'd make the motion to move this ahead to the HR Property and Finance, but with the sort of, the $30,000 seems kind of stiff compared to the other contributions, and I guess I don't know how to phrase that.
So it sounds like you're recommending that the proposal be moved forward, but that they take a review of the actual amount to authorize based on the needs, or?
The breakdown on how it's being paid for, including why we're paying $30,000 and why the local units are paying 15 in total.
Okay, so I'm hearing that we have a motion to move forward the recommendation to the HR Property and Finance Committee for additional review, but that as part of that review, that they take a look and make sure that it is appropriate for the 30,000, 15,000 division between the different government entities. Is that?
That's very good.
Is that clear enough for staff purposes as well? Okay. Well, we have a motion from Supervisor Rosenberg,
Second.
and we have a second from Supervisor Lowe. Any additional comments regarding the motion on the floor? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor of the motion to move this forward to the Finance Committee, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, and thank you very much for being here today, Carrie.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, as soon as I wake my agenda back up, we will move forward. Next item on today's agenda is item 4B, our discussion regarding the options for UW-Madison Extension's position. So you'll recall last month we began this conversation with the departure of Melinda Osterberg to her new position. We started talking about what that part-time position could or should be for the county, whether it needed to remain broadband-centric, if we wanted to keep the half-time position with extension, if we wanted to transition it into something else. And one of the things that we asked last month was that Jason come back with some additional information about what, if we decide to keep this specific position with extension, what we could potentially utilize that FTE for to help us meet our goals. And so he included a written summary in the packet, and he is here to give us a little more insight into that today. And then we as a committee can decide to make any kind of additional recommendations or request for additional information based upon what we hear and where we are looking to go at this point. So, Jason?
Yeah. Green light means go. Thank you, Chair Guild and members of the committee. So yeah, in your packet, and I kind of prefaced it in the front end, how I've outlined things per your request from the last meeting. So over the last couple of years, we've been fortunate to have Melinda as a community development educator, half-time FTE. That half-time FTE is under contractual services within our office. Her salary and benefits were co-funded by the university, so it's a split cost. So the all-in contractual fee is around $43,500, $43,600, I think it is. And so you take a half-time FTE of that. Sorry, that's the split from the county's portion. So that $43,000 was split between Lincoln and Marathon, and thus you get roughly $21,800 is the cost for a half-time FTE here in Marathon County. The rest of that is coming from our state partner in the university. So you see kind of the second paragraph, there is money in our budget in our office for technology, for other supplies, some travel expenses, the peripheral things that are required to kind of do your job, if you will. So the rough all-in cost on our budget annually for this half-time FTE is around $25,000. If I were to include the phone and computer, it's probably in the 26, but that's lumped as an office. We could get out of that too if we needed to and go a different direction. So with that $25,000, you as a body, it's already in our budget currently for 2021 here, whether or not, if you choose to move forward on a half-time position, we would then actually we're starting the budget right now. So working with administration to keep that in the budget or reappropriate to a different line item, whatever the body's discretion is. But you have options. So our organization is not just community development. We have 4-H, we have agriculture, and then there's a couple positions that are listed in here that I really think if the body so chose to go in that direction and have further conversations, may be of benefit to you. So I've outlined those. So the community development one, as I mentioned last time, the work that Melinda had done, working with Supervisor Robinson, the Broadband Task Force, there was a shift towards the end of 2020 in light of new leadership within the community development arena. And Benoit Jacob, who's our Community Development Institute, on the role of community development educators in broadband, focusing on the education and research, not on the project management piece. So that still remains. That is the core of what we do, is research, education, and that exists today. So we could, as I'm lumping extension in here, work with the county to revise that position description. It could go forward as Melinda's was, or it could be reimagined. So as I've listed in there, it could focus on broadband, or to Administrator Leonard's budget note from last year, to work on leadership development. So there's a program within community development focusing on leadership development, both internally for Marathon County and Marathon County employees, but also externally. And what can we offer to our community partners? So we look at the nonprofits, or those that have gotten money from the county in the past. Maybe that's something that we can ask them to do, because I know over the course of time it's to assist them in what are they doing internally to build up their potential, so they are not reliant on county funds, right? I mean, I heard Administrator Carger before, when that process came out, it's like, how can we assist them to get off of county assistance? And that could be done through some organizational leadership development, and that could be part of the process. So there's a lot of different ways a community development position could benefit the county. So one thing that just was presented by Carrie just before, housing. So when Melinda's on staff, we sat down with Katie Rosenberg, or Mary Rosenberg, to talk about what Extension is doing in the housing area. Carrie's accurate. One of the top priorities from the situational analysis in Area 7, housing was one of the top ones that came out. It wasn't necessarily reflected maybe in the Marathon County conversation. That's what I was trying to find before, as I brought copies of that mind map that you all created with me. But that has bubbled up throughout Area 7. So Portage County, Clark County, and Wood County. So I can tell you that if you chose to go back and want to rehire a community development educator, the state has already said, we are your partner. We're setting aside our dollars, and that's ready to go. So if the body were to say, yep, we want to refill that position and maybe rescope it, and a position description looks a little different, the state is ready to say, let's go forward with it. Lincoln County's in for that shared partnership, and that's something that potentially could be onboarded in here before the end of the year, or sooner, depending on the timeline, if you chose to go that direction. But I was asked to bring all the options, right? So there's a lot of different options that we have. So again, looking at the county strategic plan, and in relation to what you told me this spring as priorities that you want to see Extension focus on, I've outlined two of those things that I think may be of benefit to Marathon County. So the first one is a health and well-being educator. Extension had a family living program for many years, and actually Marathon County used to have a family living educator, Jackie Caratini, for many years. She's now in Wood County, and that program, through our reorganization, has kind of split off into two different offshoots. So the first one is a health and well-being, and this encompasses our FoodWise program, which we have here in Marathon County. But that FoodWise program is using SNAP Ed dollars, and thus their scope is limited because of their federal grant requirements. So it allows, if you were to contract with an educator, the impacts of methamphetamine and opioid epidemic, you have a HORT educator that's working on HORT therapy. One of the things that I just see today is the public health office put out on social media the mental health first aid training that is being offered by Extension, and promoting that. And that would bring a local context there. Right now it's a statewide piece. We don't have local staff to administer it locally, so we're sending people, we're promoting it to Marathon County residents in an online or traveling away. So you had mentioned rural health outcomes, including farmers and stress, in your strategic, or your situational analysis. This position could work towards that very explicitly in a work plan, and to address those things. Public health promotions and working, like I've already mentioned mental health first aid, Taking Care of You is another program that's happening. So there's a lot of different things that could be encompassed in a health and well-being educator. So the bottom of that, I talk about, what is the next step with that one? I did have a conversation with Amber Canto, who's their Institute Director, saying, hey, if Marathon County wanted to utilize their funds and reappropriate them towards a position like this, would you be reciprocal, and would you have the dollars available to co-fund it? She said possibly. There's a couple of things in play. One, if the county chose to go in this direction, she's currently working with my counterpart that serves Shawano County on some dollars there. So there may be a partnership with Shawano County that may work out. And there may be some other federal dollars through the FoodWise program that can be paired with a half-time FTE to make it a full FTE for recruitment and retention. Kind of two different distinct focuses, if you will. One on healthy communities, which would focus more on the food sovereignty piece, but the rest of it could focus on exactly those things, which is no different than what you're getting right now, or had gotten with Melinda. She had her focuses in Lincoln County, she had some focuses in Marathon County, so that wouldn't change, except for that FTE would be, one FTE might be here entirely in Marathon County. So it's basically what the requirements of certain pots of money are. So there's no guarantee on that one that would be kind of reciprocated on the front end, meaning right now, but it may be something in FY '22 for the county to keep it in the budget to plan for that in 2022, and have ongoing conversations with programmatic leadership of, is this something that we want, and how can we make it happen? So, and the last one that's there is a human development and relationships educator. This one, again, part of the old family living one, but family living program area, excuse me. But this focuses on a lot of your family dynamics, the financial literacy. So your strategic plan objective of making sure that every child makes it to adulthood, this would do right that. This would work towards that. Work with human services, work with public health, to address that strategic plan objective 3.3. Not its in entirety, because it's a halftime FT, but really work in that arena. And working through the Rent Smart program, financial coaching, this would get us towards that. And then in your situational analysis, I'm kind of reading my notes. I put this up. There we go. It's getting clear. So you talked about childcare issues. So that being not just the workforce, but access and alternatives to traditional childcare. So this would be an educator that could be focused on addressing that very explicitly in a position description to, again, do what they can to make changes or actionable items to affect change in that area, whether it's through coalitions involvement or individually with childcare providers or funding partners. So the list goes on and on. So this one as well. So Danielle Harrison Green is the Institute Director for this area, and I had a conversation with her. It is part of her staffing plan. Every Institute Director has a staffing plan of where they want to see the future of their institute go in service to the entire, all the residents of Wisconsin, and that includes Marathon County. Currently, there's limited opportunities for, so Jackie Caratini is in this institute. She's in Wood County. There's one in Portage County, and there's a faculty member in Clark County. But their scope is limited as faculty. They're focused and finite. And so for them to deviate from kind of their area of focus is going to be a challenge. Doesn't mean it can't happen. But we would hire this person as academic staff that could really change their plan of work consistently and regularly, and kind of be like a better term, a chameleon to make sure that they're addressing the evolving changes of any community. So that's what I brought forward today. There's other options too. Natural resources educator. I know part of the strategic plan talks about groundwater. We have a groundwater specialist out of the Wood County office that's half DNR funded, half Wood County funded, that's working on groundwater in the Central Sands area. And if you wanted to go that direction, we could have a conversation with the Natural Resources Institute. Community youth development. So historically, we've had 2 youth development professionals in our office, 4-H youth development, and then a 4-H program assistant. we now just have one. If you wanted to go in that arena, which would be working with more of your youth serving organizations like a Boys and Girls Club and those entities that we dabble in now, but we don't do it justice. We spend time in the Community Connections program with the Wausau School District and doing partnerships there. We dabble in after school, but with one person for a county this size, we don't do it justice. I'll just say what it is. And so a position like that could expand that programming if you so choose. So I feel like I'm rambling here. There's a lot of different options, a lot of things going through my head of what I see as keeping this in extension, keeping a position like this. One of these positions would, I believe, drastically impact the landscape for our residents through education and research and outreach. But it's up to this body to decide how they want to proceed.
All right, thank you. And thank you for bringing back exactly what we asked for, the options for filling this with extension. So now before I open it up to questions, I just want to reiterate kind of what we talked about last month, that the options in front of us are continuing with the halftime extension position with one of the options he just laid out for us, adapting it to continue to be broadband centric, or looking at a way to reallocate the $25,000 towards a specific broadband-focused position, whether it be one internally at the county or through a contract with either an independent contractor or McDevco or some other entity, or maybe there is a mixture of all of these depending on the funding opportunities in front of us. So we've got a lot of big items to consider, and this isn't something that we can independently decide again out of this committee, but we're the ones who need to look at this from the perspective of the strategic plan areas that we're overseeing and what we think is going to be the best way to address the needs of our county from an economic development and education perspective, and of which that side of broadband does fit, but so do a lot of other things, which is why we had the conversation this spring about all of the other areas where extension may be able to help us meet our goals. Before I move forward, I'd just be curious to know if Administrator Leonard or if our chair of HR Finance has anything else that they'd like to kind of share for perspective on this particular topic right now.
Thank you, Chair Guild. I think Jason, first of all, did a nice job outlining some of the options available through UW Extension. And one of the themes that I think this has been my experience over my 18 months serving you as your administrator, is along Jason's line of discussion. The needs of the county are very evolving, constantly evolving. And that's been one of the challenges in administration, is how do we identify individuals within our organization to take on those tasks as they arise, because quite honestly, I can't tell you what the challenge is going to be next week, and how I can bring how I can bring staff resources to those problems. And I think Extension is a nice resource to have. They've been a good resource with the situational analyses that Jason and his team have done about what are the big things, the big picture within Marathon County. What do you want Extension to work toward through that educational lens? I think it's been my experience, again, through the broadband task force, that sometimes the needs that the county has sometimes are in that education and outreach realm, and sometimes they're not. And this is something that occurred to me just this week, and I was just before your meeting, when I was talking with Jason, I was conveying to him that one of the thoughts that has been occurring to me as I'm going through interviews for the Deputy County Administrator position and speaking with our HR Director, Molly Adzik, is that there may be a model that you've seen in Fortune 500 companies or IT companies. I'll call it an ambassador program, where you bring in people or special projects position where you have an individual dedicated within an organization that is very nimble, that can be assigned to a whole realm of different areas at any given time. And I think that's something I'd like to look into more with Molly, to see what funding is available. And as I was saying to Jason right before the meeting, selfishly, this is a pot of money that I can dip into to do that. That said, I know that takes a resource away from extension. So I think it's a conversation that, as your administrator, I'd like to have with Jason and sit down and learn more about how this might work on an annual contract basis, as opposed to if we identified some resources and had it internal, how that might not only be funded, but also how it might work. You know, as a lawyer, many things in my mind just get really simple. I try to get right down to at the end of the day, who does this individual report to? Melinda doesn't report to me, or Melinda didn't report to me. They report through UW Extension. If I need somebody to do something today, I can turn to Sarah, our communications director. When John needs some press releases done, I say, go help John. Or if Tasha was needed to assist with agendas, if that's the biggest need today, Tasha's on it. And it's more nuanced when the position doesn't live within the county. So I'd like to have the opportunity to talk with Jason to see, from my perspective, what is the best way to utilize those resources. Because I think everyone in this room, Jason said it well, you know, the challenges, he alluded to it, the challenges the county's facing are ever evolving. You know, we had a family living coordinator not all that long ago. We allocated those resources elsewhere, and I think Jason makes a good point. Maybe there's some times when those resources need to be back in that area. And what sets us up to be the most nimble we can, I think, is one of the things I'd like to think more about. This is just something that occurred to me over the last, in the last couple of conversations with Molly about maybe there's a way we can do this. It's starting to come more in focus for me, but it's not there yet. So those are my initial thoughts. I have to, quite honestly, I know for $25,000, I can't get that person. I'm not gonna get a full-time person for $25,000. I get a half-time person from Extension. I don't think I can get a half-time person if the county did it ourselves without the state match for $25,000. So to make that special projects person viable, I need to find other money. So that's gonna take me some time to see if I have that other money within the budget. I know that was a lot.
Yes, but it was very helpful, I think, with framing where we are at or where we could be going or where we should be. Because I know even just looking at the descriptions that Jason gave, I mean, the fact is we could hire full-time every one of those positions and have something for that person to do. There's no question, I think, of the need of the positions, which is why we really need to be more strategic about the funding side and the priorities side of it. So Supervisor Robinson, did you want to add on to the comments from your perspective?
I'd like to just second the comments that Administrator Leonard had relative to flexibility. I understand the value of our relationship with Extension, particularly in the cost sharing and the expertise and the tying into talent elsewhere, but there's also that need to, the last year and a half have taught us how dynamic we need to be and how responsive to changing circumstances we need to be. And so there are opportunities. I support the exploration of a relationship with Extension and looking at that, if you will, that special projects ambassador to be able to come in and help out. I realize increasingly every day how much work Melinda did for us in her absence and trying to pick up some of those pieces and with Tasha, who's been wonderful, and Sarah Daudat, who's been equally wonderful in trying to step in. But clearly we have some needs in community development, Clearly, we have some needs in organizational leadership. Clearly, we have some needs that we don't yet know what those needs are. So I would support a ongoing discussion with extension about some of the issues that Administrator Leonard has laid out, and see if we can find a path forward.
Thank you. Additional thoughts or comments from committee members now that we've kind of gotten a bunch more information thrown at us? So either here or, of course, anyone on the phone who would like to make a comment or have any additional questions regarding this topic at this time. All right. Hearing and seeing none, based upon what has just been said, my takeaway as chair, and please correct me, committee members, if I'm getting this wrong, but it sounds like we are looking to continue this conversation, as was suggested by the administrator, to explore if and how we can utilize extension for a more nimble position, something that's going to be able to adapt to the changing needs of our county, recognizing that broadband is just one of those needs. And knowing that we do have some options, we may be able to work within the realm of extension. We may not, depending on what the administrator and our finance committee can identify as funding options and sources for this, and of course our HR director. So the takeaway from this meeting, I think, is continue the conversation and bring back additional information to the committee for review at next month's meeting, with the potential of making a recommendation at that time. Is that accurate? I'm seeing head nods and thumbs ups in the room. Anybody on the phone disagree? Let me know. All right, hearing nothing, then that, I believe, is the direction we'll take over the course of the next month. Thank you all very much for continuing to work on this important topic. And with that, we'll move forward. So item 5 on today's agenda is operational functions, which there are none this month. But item 6 is our educational presentations and outcome monitoring reports. So our reports from our committee-affiliated departments and organizations, most of them did include the written report. This is our opportunity to get a little bit more detail and ask our questions. So 6A1, we'll start with the Marathon County Public Library. And Leah, I believe you're joining us on the phone. Is that correct?
I am here virtually. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Chair Guild. If you see in my report, everything is still accurate. We've increased our occupancy to 100%. As I stated in the report, it's mostly a formality because we haven't hit 50% occupancy, but it's been going well. We haven't had complaints or any uncomfortable crowds. It's a nice spaced out area, and everybody is enjoying being able to come into the library and use it as they normally do. We've also, as of August 1st, opened our meeting and study room so people can reserve those. They're following CDC guidelines. Everyone who reserves the room is obligated to keep track of the people that are in their meeting or study room, and we're only basing the occupancy on the ability to have proper ventilation and social distancing according to the CDC guidelines. We're still not having any in-house programming, but we were planning on revisiting that around October after school started to see if cases bumped up, but I see that cases are already bumping up, so I suspect that that will be postponed as a conversation at our board meetings, but we are still continuing to have our modified summer library program, which has been going very successfully. We're still giving out prize books for book reports. We still have our activity books. We have lots of grab and goes going out, hundreds and hundreds every month. We can't make them fast enough. So that's been really successful as an alternative to in-house programming. And we continue to do our virtual story times on a weekly basis that people can access through our social media accounts. Also, I would like to mention that we have job postings. I'm sure many people have job postings, but we are looking for a support services manager. We're hoping to have somebody with an MLIS degree or someone with library experience. Also to have a strong technical background if possible. We're also looking for an IT technician, and it is not in my report, but just today we posted for our business specialist position, hoping for somebody who has accounting and bookkeeping experience, preferably in government and nonprofits. So putting that out there in case anybody knows of a untapped talent that might be interested. All of our job postings can be found on the Marathon County employment site. We're still getting our roof worked on. I think they're going to be closing off a portion of our front doors, but we'll still be safely accessible to the public next week. We're just going to have to sort of redirect people in a different area, but that's going well. Also, the Friends are having their big, I think 3-time-a-year multi-day book sale. It started yesterday for members only and is continuing through Saturday for the entire public, anyone who wants to attend. The first day was very, very successful. So that's really great because the Friends have not been able to have a book sale until recently for, over a year. And they also suspended membership dues. And those funds go to things like our grab and goes, for example, and for hopefully in the future to have in-house programming, and also for our big book fest event that we have every year for adults. So happy to hear that that's going well. And if anybody has any additional questions, I am here to answer them.
Great, thank you very much. It sounds like it's been busy. I'm interested to hear that you had so many grab and goes going out the door. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's been wild. Like we cannot make enough. We're ordering more materials and just putting these things together. They're just simple kits with like simple materials. In fact, when we run out, we just give instructions to parents because a lot of the things can be found at home. But it gives them activities, especially during the summer when they can't come into the library and do it, in a group setting. So yeah, it's been really nice to see that we found an alternative outlet to continue to add value to the community.
Well, and that kids are still interested in hands-on, not just electronic. So,
yes.
but any other questions or comments from committee members on the library report this month? Otherwise, that was a very thorough and useful information. So thank you very much, Leah, for taking the time to do that.
Thank you for your time.
All right, so then the next item on here is 6A2, the McDevco report. I don't know, was Vicki able to join us, Tasha? I can't quite see all the call-ins. All right, well, I do know that Vicki provided a good write-up of the successes that they're having at McDevco. So as per usual, if you do have any questions, please reach out to her directly. And I believe that later this month, I saw that they're going to have another one of their pop-up shops out at the EEC, so I encourage you to check that out. But we'll then just move on to item 6A3, our UW-Madison Division of Extension. Jason, once again, we've got your monthly update this time, which looks like you're busy as per usual with the whole team.
I think we're on now, right? Okay. Yeah, so you have the written report, and I will try to keep this brief. So you have kind of some updates in there. A couple quick major things that maybe aren't listed in there. One, our new administrative assistant will start on Monday. We're happy to announce that Kathy Johnson actually is coming to us from actually working with another youth-serving organization, the Boy Scouts of America, the Samoset Council. Great experience managing an office, working with their executive director, so we're happy to have her on board starting Monday. So that's a huge shot in the arm for our team and our office and the work that they're doing. Some of the work that's happening this week, the Wisconsin Valley Fair. So our staff are out at the fair doing educational programming. Little side note, if you go out to the fair, there's a scavenger hunt and there's free ice cream at the end. And it's not even a lot of work. So there's free ice cream, basically. Take your family. One per family, fill it out, everybody gets ice cream. That's a partnership with Extension and the Farm Bureau. So head on out to the fair. And Caitlin's active with a lot of the stuff on Tuesday and Wednesday, and actually now with the animal shows going. So a lot of things happening out there with our staff. in that sort of dynamic. The other thing is, we, like other organizations like Marathon County, other counties here, are really looking at our leaning on our public health partners right now with COVID and infections and things on the rise. So we have, over the last couple of months, have been a lot of face-to-face programming. Staff are doing their due diligence to make sure that we're offering safe spaces, distancing, masking protocols. So we're still proceeding with a lot of face-to-face stuff, but we take our leads from Marathon County and our local dynamics and here with each office. So right now in central Wisconsin, basically all the state is high infection rates. So we're strategically looking at some of our programs to offer both in person in a safe arena, as well as virtual and online back that way. So with that, if there's any questions on what else is in the report, I'm happy to answer that.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions from committee members? I think you covered it all. So thank you, and nice plug on the ice cream there. At the so, all right, then last of all, we've got 6A4, our UW Stevens Point Wausau campus. Anne, are you still on the line with us?
You bet.
Wonderful. The
Last
floor is
but
yours.
not least,
Certainly not.
I actually don't have much to add, anything to add beyond the report. We're just busy getting ready for the start of the semester. The summer is a marathon, and then August is a sprint. And so we're sprinting right now to be ready. So if you drive by, you will see why, because the front entrance, the east entrance, is all torn up, and it's busy.
Well,
But it's good busy.
I was pleased to see that the numbers look like they're coming in strong again this fall. So that's
I know the worry always this time of the year is that, because this happened last summer, that we saw more melt, they call it, in August, and COVID seems to be just, I don't know, it just is so, it's so different. It's so hard to predict how enrollments are going to come in. And now with this, surge in numbers, it just throws a wrench. You hear from a lot of students who say, I just can't do it again. I just can't do online again. They're worried that that's where we're headed again. And so I do worry about last minute melt.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the questions I had was with the, some of the news just in the last week about some different schools eyeing up different options. Is there anything that we should be aware of, or any questions that we, maybe should anticipate, or just kind of keep our ears open?
Well, I mean, I hope I'm maybe I'll be talking out of turn if I say this, but I really hope desperately that the legislature doesn't tie the UW's hands in the ability to stay open. What everybody wants is in-person classes. That's what our students want, but they need to feel safe. And none of us want to go back to online classes. The way to do that, I believe firmly, is that we have to be able to mask again, and not go to the legislature and ask for permission to mask, but to flip a switch and require masking again if necessary. So, and just to explain a little bit with background, our spaces are not large spaces, so we can't spread everybody out and have a regularly sized class meet in person. If we have to space again, if we have to distance students again, that's going to require that we move a bunch of classes online or do them hybrid, right? Half online, half in person. And students don't want to do that. They want to be in person. But to be able to not distance, then we need to be able, I believe we need to be able to require masking of everybody that's in the buildings, even if you're vaccinated. And I feel like it's a really small price to pay if we want to stay in person. So I have my fingers crossed that the legislature won't go down this road and require that we ask the legislature permission to require masking.
Understood. Thank you for the additional insight on that one, because I'm
But
sure it'll
I'm
be,
being totally candid here.
come
Like,
up.
this is, we want to stay open, and I feel like it's what we need to do to be able to stay in person.
Okay. Any questions or comments from committee members? Well, I don't think we do at this time, but we know how to get in touch with you. And I did want to say that I loved your comment about helping to find the Robin for our Batman. So thank you for taking the time to assist with that.
Lance didn't know he's Batman. But
That is my favorite superhero for what it's worth.
That doesn't surprise me, actually. So, well, thank you very much, as always.
sure.
All right, well then we'll head on to item 7, the next meeting time, location, announcements, and future agenda items. So do any committee members have any additional items that they'd like to bring forward as recommendations for future meetings? Hearing none, please always reach out to me if something does come across your radar in the interim. Our next meeting will be on Thursday, September 2nd at 4 p.m. I feel like I should say same bat time, same bat channel, considering the theme. No, it's definitely time for item 8. I will accept a motion to adjourn, unless nobody wants to.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much. We will see you in a month.